Good afternoon. Welcome, everyone, to CES and especially to Gary's Book Club. I'm Tyler Suiters with CEA's communications team. We're very glad you're with us and taking a few moments out of your busy CES schedules to join us. Today we are talking about Connected by Design. Very interesting book. We're going to dive pretty deeply into it, so put on your thinking caps. This requires some thought, and you got to come along for the ride here. A lot of strong business strategy here. To my immediate left is Barry Wacksman. To his immediate left is Chris Stutzman, the co-authors of Connected by Design. Both are with RGA, Full Service Digital Advertising and Marketing Consultancy. Barry, I'm going to hit your bio first, okay? 15 years with RGA, okay? Barry's helped shape the vision of the agency and advised dozens of Fortune 500 companies on digital strategy. Chris joined RGA 3 years ago, correct? All right. Prior to joining them, he was Vice President and Principal Analyst at Forrester Research. And I can knock this off with one sentence. Both live with their wives and their sons in New York City independently. But gentlemen, great to have you with us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
It's great to be here.
How is CES treating you so far? Let's talk first of all about what you've seen, what you've done, what catches your attention.
Well, first of all, it's overwhelming, right? I mean, just the size and the scale of it. But I think what has really blown my mind is just how much what's happening right now in consumer electronics is a complete validation of everything that we wrote about, you know, starting 3 years ago, roughly, when these ideas began to surface. So it's been gratifying to see that this is really where the whole industry is headed.
Mm-hmm. And I do want to point out that you all have a number of clients here, so you have a vested interest in what's going on.
That's right.
Chris, what about what you've seen, what you've done so far that catches your attention?
Yeah, it's proof that we are actually living in the connected age. Mm-hmm. So from your car to your home, living rooms to business in your workplace, your body, everything is connected. And it's happening right here at CES.
Mm-hmm. So I'm interested when we talk about your company and we say full service digital advertising, digital is a pretty big umbrella right now. And I think from a corporate side, and I'm taking a few liberties in painting a broad brushstroke here, but everybody wants digital, not everybody knows what digital encapsulates in terms of a business strategy.
Right.
What does it bring to mind for you?
Well, RGA was one of the early web design shops, for lack of a better term. So when the web came along in the mid-90s, there were a bunch of companies that got into the fray of helping companies develop their web presence online. So that's how all of us started. And over the years, it eventually evolved and morphed into a much more multi-headed kind of beast. As social media came along, as mobile came along, we all had to learn new skills. But where I think where it's gone, at least for us, is that this is now the epicenter of where our clients are building their products and services. It's no longer really, I think the word advertising is a misnomer, and we don't even really call ourselves an agency any longer. We don't really have a snappy one-word term that describes what we do, but somehow we bring together consulting, product and service innovation, and communications under one roof, and that seems to be the formula of what these big Fortune 500 companies need right now to continue to grow.
Chris, I heard an interesting explanation last night. This is during Intel's keynote with Brian Krzanich, and one of his guest stars on stage was from HP. And he talked about the transition from the physical world to the digital world and back again. And he was talking primarily about hard products, things you could touch, feel, 3D printing, for example. Yeah. But this also applies to a business strategy going from the physical to the digital and potentially back again, right? Or do you see it in those terms?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, that's quite a bit about what our book is about, is how you can actually take physical products, create a software service layer around it, and suddenly you have a service, right? Software in the cloud. And so physical products and software are moving back and forth between each other. And it's how you actually connect those. The people who are doing that really well are winning.
Well, let's get to the book itself, and I was remiss in not mentioning the subtitle, 7 Principles for Business Transformation Through Functional Integration.
Right.
Like I said, we need to put on our thinking caps. This is a deep dive. How did you come up with the idea for the book? Did you identify a need specifically through your day-to-day, or was it an overarching need that you saw throughout business?
It was just a trend that I picked up on as I watched our clients evolve from about 2005, 2006 up till about 2010. I think I came up with the idea of functional integration in 2011. I was writing a presentation for a big event that RGA was participating in France.
I thought you were going to say for a proposal, and I was going to ask if you got the client or not. But I'm glad it was something that was already locked in.
Right, it was a presentation. And it was just an observation that that a lot of our clients are all big Fortune 500 companies, and we could see the frustration building inside of these organizations that they were just finding it really hard to grow. And part of it was, economic. There was economic downturns and stuff that happened in 2007, 2008. But a lot of what was happening was just the strategy that they had used for many, many decades to grow was starting to come to an end. Mm-hmm. And we were starting to see the emergence of something new. And we saw it firsthand through it's our oldest client and often our biggest client, which is Nike. Mm-hmm. And they started to go down the path, and I think that they were pioneers, and really tip of the hat to them. They really pioneered this space as a non-technology company of inventing some of the earliest services that were digital for their customers. Mm-hmm. So here you had this company that had made shoes and apparel for decades and were the world leader in that space. And around 2006, they made the leap into creating some of the very first digital services called Nike Plus. Mm-hmm. And so that's where we began to see this trend emerge. And eventually, we began to see more broadly that the winners in the economy right now are these companies that figured out a way to connect their products and services in a way that they create more value for the consumer, mm-hmm. so that we as consumers actually want to go out and buy more of these things. Mm-hmm. And then eventually we saw the rise of companies like Apple and Google, really, and Amazon and perhaps others exemplifying this trend, going away from the idea of creating these segmented products where you go after all these different consumer niches to more of a model where everything that they do is connected in some way to get the same consumer to buy everything. Mm-hmm. I think Apple might be the first company that did that on a very large scale. Right. And many of us have all of the different products that Apple has ever made. And we have all the services that connect them, iTunes, iCloud, all of that stuff. Mm-hmm. We buy a lot of our music through App Store, books through the bookstore, et cetera. So I think Apple might be the poster child for functional integration. And that's a term that we came up with to describe this new emerging business model.
And we'll dive a little more deeply into that Apple example when we call out some of the text a little later. Chris, what about you? What was a lightning bolt moment? Was it Barry running down the hall and saying, I've got this great idea for a book, come on board with me?
I was actually at Forrester prior to joining RGA 2.5, 3 years ago, and I had seen Barry talk about functional integration. I was covering this space. I was sitting in between CMOs and marketing service providers, technology innovation firms, and I immediately recognized what Barry was describing, what he had named. Essentially what I see is, this is the business model for the connected age. It's just that simple. If you could describe 20th century business as being dominated by two business models, horizontal integration and vertical integration, which we get, which is taught in business schools. What was lacking was a way to describe what was happening. Why are Google and Apple and Amazon dominating, and then ultimately Nike? How could you describe it? And functional integration is the way to describe that. So that's what I recognized immediately. I was enamored by it, and I thought it was really the first time I had actually heard a really lucid articulation of what was happening. But we were still trying to figure it out. Mm-hmm. We don't know where it's going to go, but it was the first time somebody I think could pinpoint and said, this is what's happening.
Well, that's what's especially interesting to me in reading this, is that it almost feels like it's a real-time analysis. We're not looking too far back and doing a case study. This is still emerging and evolving strategy.
Right.
With that in mind, I hope you don't mind if I read some of your own writing back to you.
Sure.
From the chapter on the digital revolution, Principle 2, context is king. And we're talking about automotive companies in particular, which is especially relevant here since we have a record 10 auto companies exhibiting here at CES. And I'll quote now. At the 2013 Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas, General Motors announced a move that was unlike any other in the company's 104-year history. Starting with its 2014 models, the car maker would incorporate smartphone-like applications into its dashboard infotainment systems. GM, however, would not be the maker of the vast majority of these apps. Instead, the company announced plans to launch its own app store, a catalog of apps that third-party developers will sell or give away free to GM vehicle owners. So here's a step in the direction of what we're seeing right now, and we've heard from more than one automaker, which is it's not an auto sector, it's not an consumer technology sector, it's blended right now, and it sounds like GM got that.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. Obviously, they're taking a bit of a page out of the Apple playbook.
Oh, clearly, right.
By creating
which
an app
is not
store.
A bad thing whatsoever.
Right. But I think the higher level idea here is to take these legacy things like cars, and if you think about it, you know, many of us own more than one car, yet very few of us own two cars from the same manufacturer. There's some diehard fans of different brands who do that, but many of us buy cars based on like a single functional benefit. I've got a minivan because I got to haul my kids around, and I've got a sportier car for the weekend to go out and rage on the roads or whatever. Very few people have ever owned two cars from the same manufacturer. And you can go industry by industry and you see this pattern over and over again. So looking at Apple and Google and maybe some of these other firms as some of the first companies that figured out how to get the same consumer to buy more than one thing from them, everybody's now trying to do this. And the way to do it is to create some sort of a connected ecosystem between whatever your legacy might be. It could be cars, it could be shoes, in the case of Nike, and digital services that somehow connect them so that we as consumers want to go out and buy the next thing, the next thing, and the next thing. And that's really the big idea here. And I think we look at the startup world, we have an accelerator that we run inside of RGA in partnership with Techstars. Just about every startup now, nobody starts with the idea that we're going to make this one thing. They all start with the idea that we're going to make this one thing, but eventually it's going to be part of a broader ecosystem. Look at Nest or something like that. They started with smoke alarms, but they knew once they had the smoke alarm in your house, not smoke alarms, thermostat, that eventually they could add to the ecosystem something like a smoke alarm. And we can imagine future products being maybe intrusion detection or whatever. And again, that's the connected ecosystem strategy. That's the very idea of functional integration, is providing a way that a connection between these products and services so that the same consumer wants to keep adding to the ecosystem.
Chris, I know you want to jump in.
Well, I would think one thing that I see is a very noticeable difference in terms of how automakers are positioning themselves and what they're doing here today versus even 3 or 4 years ago. I remember when Dieter Zetsche gave a keynote, amazing keynote from Mercedes, Daimler Mercedes, a few years ago, and it was all about the connected car.
Right.
And yet now, when you see there are 10 automakers here, they're not talking about a connected car, they're talking about a connected driver.
Right.
Yeah. That's not just semantics here. What they're saying is it's not about a product, connected product. Our product, the thing we make, needs to connect to your life, into that person. Not connected drivers, connected passengers, connected carpooling, the whole thing. That's the difference. That's what we're talking about.
And that's something we heard from Ford in their keynote just the other night, which is we're changing a bit, going from giving you a great driving experience to trying to give you a great riding experience. And that brings in an integration, I think, of more elements of products as well.
Yeah.
Next chapter, and I think this dovetails nicely with what you just said, Chris, the ecosystem of value, okay? Principle 3, synergy captures customers. Now, this is the Apple example, Barry, and heading down the road where you started. I'll read this quote again. In 1999, Apple Computer had fallen on such hard times, its share of the global personal computer market had dwindled to below 3%. I'll let that sink in. Below 3% in 99. And let me jump ahead. Software developers had grown reluctant to write versions of their applications for Apple's Macintosh OS because Apple offered them so few potential customers again. See where we're going. Ironically, it was rejection by one such software maker that put Apple on the path to becoming the world's most valuable company. Rejection led to innovation. Is that a fair equation to say?
Yeah.
So,
well, if you think about it, I think at the darkest day of Apple, around 97, the year that Jobs returned as the interim CEO at the time, Microsoft, I think, wrote them a loan, a check for like 150 or 300 million, I can't remember the precise amount. And they mainly did it because they needed to have at least one company out there. This is at the height of their antitrust battles. So Bill Gates basically saved Apple by writing him this check for 300 million, and of course they came around to completely dominate the same industry just within about a decade. So that's the power of this business model. And I think that's where Microsoft and some others missed out. I think Microsoft did have a connected ecosystem in their heyday. They had the dominant operating system. They had the dominant productivity software that just about every business used, and they had the dominant back-end like email system. And they had this beautiful ecosystem, and most IT managers at companies couldn't resist that troika of buying all three of those things. But when the internet came along, I think they became protective of that group of products, and they missed the leap into this next world that Apple was able to sort of leapfrog into, which was the internet, and of course Google, which was more the internet age.
So Chris, for a B2B audience, maybe they're not at 3% share like Apple was, or considering that downtimes, right?
Yeah, that's right.
But how do you, or at what point do you embrace this strategy at a high level, business strategic performance level, and move in the right direction? How quickly, I guess, can you turn the ship? Does it entirely depend on the size of a company?
Sure, but for B2B companies, it's just as powerful. I think, in particular, from the B2B side, if you are in the Internet of Things space, if you are using sensors, if you are tracking inventory, if you're tracking supplies within the supply chain or within even the human value chain, connecting that ecosystem to deliver more value for your customers is exactly what functional integration would do. So again, instead of just supplying widgets or nuts and bolts. You're actually providing a service on top of that. That's what functional integration would let you do.
I would imagine if we were to go to the similar trade show, not the consumer electronics show, but like the business electronics show or whatever, we would see a number of startups, and we would see very few that didn't have some sort of an ecosystem strategy in mind from the get-go. Nobody today is building a single point solution for just about anything, unless it's just chasing after a very low margin business, very cheap manufacturing or whatever.
Right.
So.
Right.
I mean, Samsung, right, just big announcement. They are betting the future on Internet of Things.
Yeah.
Everything, right? 70% of every product within 2017, I think
well, BK Yoon on his keynote Monday had said he wants to see every product connected in 5 years.
In 5 years.
So 100% in 5 years.
So now think of the value. You immediately see that as a consumer value. Oh, I see it. I understand my home. From my bedroom with clocks and televisions into my kitchen with coffee machines and with refrigerators and even into my car and in the workplace, my laptop, my mobile phone. You understand that. But now think of all the value for all the businesses, all the suppliers, all the middlemen, everybody who's involved with every single device that Samsung makes. They're all going to get value out of that. Right. So they're thinking of it as both B2C and B2B strategy.
And I think his remarks hit the nail on the head. This is the race that's on right now. In the 20th century, there was a race to build out big portfolios of brands, and that's why these companies kept adding more and more products and brands to their portfolio to go after all these different consumer segments. And now the race is to connect it all somehow. Right. Maybe have less products and brands.
So imagine Samsung is sitting on an entire pool of customer data and behavior around what people need, when they need it, how they're using all these devices. Instead of thinking about one device at a time, having somebody who just takes care of appliances and washing machines or dishwashers or coffee makers, somebody looking at all of that.
Right.
And now trying to say, what are the services we can provide on top of that to make life better for those people? That's the long-term position for them to win.
Yeah.
And I know we're talking to marketing and ad experts, but that's a theme we hear again and again through connected design and the Internet of Things. That is a focus on consumers and making our lives better, making them easier, or making them more fun.
Right. And that's why this business model only emerged in the 21st century. It wouldn't have been possible in the pre-digital age. It's these technology services that we can integrate into everyday life that are making all of this possible. Couldn't have done this in 1980, as an example. Okay. There's just no way.
Let me pull out one more passage.
Sure.
This is a subtitle within one. Deliver innovation through technology, especially fitting for our audience here, I think. Functional integration, capital F, capital I, requires innovating with technology, but does not depend on technological innovation, which is interesting. You want to deliver value in innovative ways through technology, but success in delivering value rarely relies on making technological breakthroughs. That is something that may be anathema to a lot of us here at CES, but I think the value there is not in the words themselves, but the underlying principle. Right? So if you would delve into that a bit for us, explain.
I would say, just to start off, that the way we look at it is, and this is working with, we deal with startups. We're talking about, seed round, A-series startups, all the way to Fortune 500, Fortune 50 companies. And from what we see, all the technology you need to innovate and connect things and be a player in the connected age is already here.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of actually making it work, connecting it, and delivering the most amazing experience with it. So we posit that functional integration ultimately is the best in class, the best customer experience, human experience you can provide using software and algorithms or technology and data.
Barry, you want to add on that in terms of the value of where innovation is, in terms of, the term we use is for technology general.
Right.
Innovation comes in many flavors.
Yeah. I think people also underestimate how important execution is, and that's maybe one of the reasons why Apple's been so successful. Certainly the iPod was not the very first MP3 player, but it was the one that connected to an ecosystem for the very first time through iTunes and eventually to the iTunes Store. So it's not as if Apple invented the MP3 category. They didn't invent the idea of streaming digital music. They just figured out the best way to put all this stuff together in a way that the consumer wanted to buy it, to have it. So I think that hits that point right on the head, is that a lot of it is around the execution of these things more than anything else. Okay. We've seen that firsthand with Nike. We worked on early versions with them of things like Nike Plus, which became a service for runners, and some of their competitors launched services within a year or two to try to mimic some of that functionality or that technology. And they weren't embraced by consumers. They just weren't very well designed, quite honestly. And meanwhile, Nike Plus, which is now over 8 years old, has about 32 million. I think the last public number that Nike shared, which is probably about 9 months ago, was about 32 million members. So it's quite a large audience of users.
So I want to peer into the future a little bit with each of you.
Sure.
Connected by Design is the current book. What would you title the sequel? Right? What's missing here? And tell me why. What would the next step be beyond the purpose of functional integration?
I don't think I had one book in me. Now I have to have two.
One and done.
Right.
It's Jurassic Park 2. Come on.
Yeah, I honestly believe that this is going to be the business strategy and the business model that's going to unfold at least over the next 5 years. There's going to be this massive race of all the companies, particularly here in this industry, to try to create these connected ecosystems. It's going to take a bunch of twists and turns, which none of us can predict where it will go and how it will innovate, but I don't see the fundamental underlying idea changing that dramatically. We're just going to have a lot more examples to share if we were to come back in a year or 2 years or 5 years of how this unfolded.
Yeah, that real-time element, I think, is what I was alluding to earlier, that this is happening right now. You're not looking too far back.
Yeah, it won't even be news anymore. You know, imagine the early days of automobiles when Ford, created the Model T or something like that, and I don't know how long it was before they introduced a second model, but that must have been like a huge revolutionary bit of news.
Right.
Oh my God, there's now 2 models of cars that you can buy. That, nowadays we don't even blink when a company introduces a new model of something that they've done forever. So the novelty of this will have worn off within 5 years, but I think the battleground's going to stay the same.
Interesting.
I think we actually had a conversation around how much to make this a big idea book, which it is, versus a how-to book.
Right.
And clearly, just because we're in the midst of it, seeing how this thing's going to, it can't be a how-to book. And our hope was that we would inspire and show the way for other people to show the world how to do it. That there would be many other people leaping off of this, using this as a springboard to show the world how it's done.
Okay. Great. Well, before we go, I'm going to let you guys hold the book. And are you both on Twitter? You want to share your handles?
Yes.
Please, go right ahead.
I'm just at Wacksman, my last name.
Okay.
At CJ Stutzman.
All right, and here's where you can find them both. This will be on Twitter within the next 5 minutes, I'm sure. Smile, gentlemen. All right. My handle is just at Tyler Suiters. We'll have this up momentarily. Barry Wacksman, Chris Stutzman, thank you both for your time. You can talk with Barry and Chris just to stage right, our left, at Gary's Book Club. They'll be there signing books, and we'll be happy to answer more questions about Connected by Design. So, gentlemen, thank you both. And to all of you, thank you for joining us. Have an outstanding remainder of CES.
Thank you.